The pathway to achieving a viable and sustainable power sector in Nigeria was a key focus at the 2017 PricewaterhouseCoopers Power and Utilities Roundtable in Lagos. It brought together stakeholders from the public and private sector space to assess current policies in the power sector and chart the way forward. Keynote speaker and Honorable Commissioner for Energy and Mineral Resources in Lagos State, Mr. Lawale Oluwo, shared his perspective on what should be the approach of the federal government in the power sector and also the strategies the state has deployed so far.
I think the following restructuring have become inevitable. Number one, I do not understand why Nigeria as a government continues to hold on to 100% ownership stake in the transmission company of Nigeria. So I advocate the full privatization of the TCN. I advocate the complete privatization of the remaining power plants nationwide. I advocate the full divestment of government holdings in the remaining GENCOs through the Nigerian Stock Exchange. I suggest that that should be followed with full divestment too of government holdings in the distribution companies through the stock exchange. I suggest the full privatization of the restructured Nigerian gas company. You know, it's been broken down into two now. I think we should sell the two. I recommend the full implementation of the cost-reflective tariff in Nigeria to start without delay in major cities that have power consumers who can afford it. There is no point grouping everybody together and waiting for the next 5 years before we can get to cost-reflective. Let's start it the way we started the cashless. Let's start it in Lagos. Let's start it in Kano. Let's start it in Port Harcourt and elsewhere that we believe are viable, so that over time, what we get from them by way of incremental revenue can subsidize our other states that are not in a position to embrace cost-reflective tariff at this time. I believe Nigeria should focus on helping states, either on a standalone or grouping together as clusters to implement embedded power program. The time for decentralization of the power sector is here. If you don't decentralize, we will not get to where we are going. I also believe that foreign exchange is a major problem in the power sector. We have been trying to do a program in Lagos. A lot of investors are interested, but three concerns here. One, at the point of investment, at what exchange rates will they bring their investment in? At the point of repatriation, at what exchange rates and what protection do they have against devaluation? And also with respect to gas. Gas is still priced in dollars today, whether you are bringing the gas from outside or you are sourcing the gas from Nigeria. These are issues that the federal government must look into. I also believe we should create a window for repatriation that will encompass the present features window we have in the CBN today and something much more, because we need to give investors confidence, and the way our currency continues to depreciate is not going to encourage anybody with foreign exchange to come here only to devalue their own investments. Lagos, based on the program we are trying to implement now, would become a net exporter of power in Nigeria. So as we do the architecture for power generation, transmission, and distribution in Nigeria, Lagos should be a key point of focus. And number three, the economy of Lagos supports the implementation of a cost-reflective tariff. And if we start the cost-reflective in Lagos, it will be easy for us to push it further to other parts of Nigeria. We are doing intervention in generation. We are guaranteeing 3,000 megawatts. We guarantee the availability of gas supply in Lagos. We will support the TCN for limited transmission, because the transmission lines we have in the state now, on the eastern side, only ends at Ajah. If you go further than Ajah, there is no transmission capability. So if you generate any power from there, you cannot evacuate. I want to conclude that we will begin to find solutions to the power problems in Nigeria if we focus on Lagos as the first place to start, because we believe focusing on Lagos will create that model. It will give us a workable and implementable plan that is sustainable, and those states that cannot afford what we are proposing cannot be subsidized by the federal government. But what is wrong is to pretend to be subsidizing everybody on the assumption that everybody cannot afford power, and then you don't get to, enforce a cost-reflective price regime. And when you don't do that, you limit investments into the sector, you limit competition, you limit the supply side, and you will not have power. That is where we are today.
Panelists at the roundtable agreed that the cost-reflective tariff was a major step to be implemented in the country in addressing the liquidity issues in the power sector.
Cost-reflective tariff is important to us because I think one thing that we hope everybody will take away from today is that the power sector is a value chain. From end to end, the value chain. One bit is weak, everywhere is weak. So the way we look at it is this. There is a situation where there is a misalignment in tariff. Mrs. Oshibodo hinted at it. The government has a tendency to look at electricity just from the social obligation and maybe social welfare point of view. So there seems to be a challenge in terms of looking at tariff and deciding what is the right tariff and backing it up. The consequence of not backing it up is that it leads to deficit from the distribution end, because the money collected from distribution is what services the rest of the industry, all the way back to the gas supplier. So if that they are not made good, and please don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that the distribution companies are angels. They have challenges on their own side as well. So we shouldn't dismiss that. But ultimately, part of the solution is having tariff that can allow them to make investments, that allow them to improve on their efficiencies. Without that, it's like a chicken and egg.
How do we all change and realize that when we are bypassing, when we are not paying, we are killing ourselves? Cultural change, whether you are the big man, small man, and it does not matter. It's not a matter of small man, no. It's not a matter of this, and I've seen so many big people. So when we're talking about the change that we all need to do, it is from all of us in the chain. That value chain does not stop at the operators. The value chain ends up at my level where I have to do my own bit. So when we're talking about tariff, cost-reflective tariff, a significant chunk that to some extent he has referred to it in another earlier, and he has also referred to it. If people are paying their bill, that cost will go down. If there's enforcement, which he is mentioning, and there are other countries like that, it's criminal. In UK, you don't pay your electricity bill and you have a house there, they will mortgage your house without even waiting for you and use it to pay the bill and give you the change. So you won't even try it. But here, we will even prove why I will not pay it. I've taken the electricity, and you say, I don't like the bill you have given me. Fine, you don't like the bill, there's a process. But because of that, I'm not paying, and your law allows you not to pay. So you're killing yourself. I hope these points, we're getting it. So as we start to reorientate ourselves, when we're talking cost reflective, if we remove that portion, the amount of increase will be not as much. Like that. So that portion is so important in terms of looking, but as long as that is not removed, then the tariff must go very high, and then it starts coming down again.
Fundamental issues in the industry that have to be addressed, and that's firstly is customer enumeration. Everybody who is on the system should be captured and brought into the system. That's the first issue. Two, we need to have a metering solution. Everybody must be metered. Three, you need to have a revenue assurance framework that ensures that the customer is not just bearing the losses if I'm not operating efficiently in line with my revenue requirements. The customer is not the one bearing the losses at the end of the day. And because the industry is so codependent, so you can see from the GenCo to transmission to distribution, they all get paid along the way. There has to be something that Dr. George at the end sees that this is how much we are making. This is the vending. It's not the disco collects all the money and tells Mbed, oh, this is what I have. So we need to have some transparency in the system. We all need to know that information asymmetry shouldn't exist anymore. We all need to know what everyone is earning along the value chain. We know what the approved rates for each person is, and we have a revenue assurance system. And whatever you do, you know that the people who will pay, you've captured everybody. They're on the system. So it's everything ties together. Yeah. And if you go ahead and just do it now, when you haven't addressed the fundamental issues, you're going to create serious unfairness and inequity in the system. And I've spoken to some disco CEOs that operate in certain top areas. They will tell you that we do not even want a tariff increase. Wow. Because if you increase that tariff, that is it. As in, even the 20% that are paying me now will stop paying. So you need to capture everybody, bring everybody into the system, right? Have your revenue assurance framework, ensure that everyone is metered, and address the issue of electricity theft.
Mr. Lawale Oluwo, the Energy and Mineral Resources Commissioner for Lagos State, speaks further on the roundtable and shares insight on the Lagos Power Plan.
Mind you, our economy is the size of the economy of Ghana and Kenya combined. And Ghana is already doing 4,800 megawatts, while Kenya is doing 2,400. And Lagos is just getting like 800 kilowatts from the grid. I mean, it's not sustainable. 800 megawatts. It's not sustainable. So for us, we believe generation must increase. We believe the disco infrastructure must be upgraded. We believe very strongly too that the tariff that will be charged must be cost reflective, and then we must support them in collection, and we meter everybody, and then we make gas available. So we are doing intervention in the entire value chain. We've gone very far. We have the regulators go ahead in Abuja in writing. We are in the State Assembly now to make sure that we make it a law of the state, in which case it becomes compulsory to be implemented. Then if we're able to do that and we're able to give people power, they will pay more because we will meter them. And the design is to make it 24 hours, sustainable for every corridor that we roll it out. And the intention is that over the years, Lagos will be able to have the embedded power cover the entire state, in which case it would have helped to relieve the national grid because we are making it off-grid, and then whatever is been coming to Lagos from the national grid can now be available for the rest of the country. So we are not doing it for just Lagos. The consequential effect of it is that it will increase power nationwide. Anything that will increase power in Nigeria should be welcomed. So we believe Lagos should be a model case. The administration is committed, the governor is committed, and we have also made some provisions in our budget to support this project for 2018. So we roll out with the first 1,000 starting from next year.
The consensus from the roundtable today is that the power sector must be repositioned to be commercially viable, with the government taking the initial risk to guarantee strategic investments. This is how all stakeholders agree that Nigeria will be on the path to attaining incremental and sustainable power in the country.